They thought they could just break me and take everything, but they forgot one thing. I always play the long game, and now I am back to take it all.
If you've ever been underestimated because of who you are, this story is for you. Hit that subscribe button and let's dive into how I turned their rejection into my biggest victory. My name is Keisha, and 5 years ago, I was just another executive assistant at a tech startup in downtown Chicago. I had dreams bigger than my paycheck, but I was working my way up, one spreadsheet at a time. I never imagined that attending one industry conference would change my entire life. It was a Tuesday morning when I first saw James Whitmore III across that crowded convention hall. He wasn't like the other suits there, you know the type, the ones who talk over you in meetings and act like their money makes them smarter. James was different. He actually listened when I spoke about market trends, and when I corrected him on a tech statistic, he smiled instead of getting defensive. We spent the whole afternoon talking, and by evening, I knew I was in trouble. Not because he was rich, though the Whitmore name was plastered on half the buildings in the city, but because he made me laugh. Real laughs, not the polite ones you give your boss. When he asked for my number, I almost said no. I'd heard enough stories about wealthy men and their games, but something in his eyes made me take the chance. For 6 months, we kept our relationship quiet. James said he wanted to get to know me without his family's interference, and honestly, I was fine with that. I'd Googled the Whitmores enough to know they weren't the type to welcome someone like me with open arms. Old money, old traditions, old prejudices, but James kept insisting his family would love me once they got to know me. Sweet man, but naive as hell. The night he finally took me home to meet them, I spent 3 hours getting ready. I chose a conservative dress, nothing too flashy. I researched their business interests, their charity work, even their golf club memberships. I was ready for anything, or so I thought. The Whitmore mansion sat on 5 acres in the most exclusive part of town. As we pulled up that circular driveway, James squeezed my hand and said, "They're going to adore you." I should have known right then that this man had never faced real adversity in his life. Victoria Whitmore answered the door herself, no staff, which I later learned was intentional. She wanted to size me up personally. She was everything I expected, perfectly styled silver hair, designer everything, and a smile that never reached her eyes. "You must be Keisha," she said, looking me up and down like I was a piece of furniture she was considering buying. How nice. Dinner was a masterclass in passive aggression. William Whitmore, James's father, barely acknowledged my presence except to ask what my father did for work. When I said he was a mechanic, the silence stretched so long I could hear the grandfather clock ticking in the hallway. Caroline, James's sister, kept making little comments about how interesting it must be to work for other people as if she'd never had a job in her life, which, let's be honest, she probably hadn't. James tried to steer the conversation towards safer topics, but his family had an agenda. They asked about my education, my family's background, my intentions with their son. Every question was designed to remind me that I didn't belong in their world. And you know what? It worked. By the time dessert arrived, I felt about 2 inches tall. But then Victoria made her biggest mistake. She started talking about family legacy, about how important it was to preserve what previous generations had built. She talked about bloodlines and breeding like we were discussing racehorses, and something inside me snapped. "You're absolutely right," I said, setting down my fork. "Legacy is everything. It's about what you build, what you create, what you leave behind. I respect that about your family." Victoria looked pleased, thinking she'd finally gotten through to me. "That's exactly why I plan to build my own." The conversation died right there. James looked confused, his parents looked annoyed, and Caroline looked like she'd swallowed something bitter. But I felt clarity for the first time all evening. These people thought they could intimidate me into walking away. They had no idea who they were dealing with. 2 weeks later, Victoria called me directly, not James, me. She wanted to meet for coffee, just the two of us. I knew what was coming, but I went anyway. She chose some fancy cafe in her neighborhood, the kind of place where a latte costs more than most people's lunch. She got straight to the point. "Keisha, I like you," she lied smoothly. "You seem like a lovely girl, but James has responsibilities, expectations. His future wife will need to fit into our world, understand our way of life." She slid an envelope across the table. "This should help you get started on your own path." I looked at that envelope and felt something I'd never experienced before, pure, focused rage. Not the hot, explosive kind that makes you say things you regret, the cold, calculating kind that makes you dangerous. I opened it, $50,000. They thought they could buy me like a problem that needed solving. "Mrs. Whitmore," I said, sliding the envelope back. "I appreciate the gesture, but I'm not for sale. However, I am open to negotiation." Her eyebrows shot up. "Excuse me? You want to talk about legacy? Let's talk about legacy. I've done my research on your family's business empire, very impressive." especially considering how you acquired some of those properties back in the 80s. I watched her face go pale. I'm not here to destroy anything, I'm here to build something with or without your approval. That night, I started making calls. See, what the Whitmores didn't know was that I hadn't been working as an executive assistant because I couldn't do anything else. I'd been learning, watching, studying how successful people operated. I'd been saving every penny, investing smartly, and building a network of contacts who actually respected my intelligence. I called my friend David, who worked in commercial real estate. I called my former professor, who now ran a boutique investment firm. I called my cousin Marcus, who'd built his own tech company from nothing. I told them all the same thing: I was ready to make my move. The first thing I discovered was that the Whitmore fortune wasn't as solid as they pretended. William had made some risky investments in the past few years, and their cash flow was tighter than they wanted anyone to know. Their real estate empire was impressive, but it was also leveraged to the hilt. They were wealthy on paper but cash poor in reality. The second thing I learned was that several of their property acquisitions from the 80s were questionable at best. Nothing illegal, but definitely unethical. They'd used insider information and political connections to buy up properties that were about to be rezoned for commercial use. The sellers had no idea their land was about to become worth 10 times what they sold it for. I spent 3 months building my case and my resources. I started my own consulting firm, specializing in helping small businesses navigate commercial real estate deals. My first client was a company that wanted to build a new office complex right next to a property the Whitmores had been trying to develop for years. I helped my client secure the land for half what the Whitmores had been offering. James was confused by my sudden career change, but he was also proud. "I love seeing you so motivated," he said one evening as I worked late on my laptop. "My family's going to have to accept that you're not going anywhere." If only he knew the half of it. My second major move was more personal. James had been dropping hints about marriage for months, but I could tell he was waiting for his family's blessing. That blessing was never coming, so I decided to take matters into my own hands. "Let's elope," I said one morning over breakfast. "This weekend, just us, no family drama, no big production. What do you say?" James's face lit up like Christmas morning. "Really, you'd want that?" "I want you," I said, which was true. "Everything else is just noise." We flew to Vegas that Saturday and got married in a small chapel with 2 strangers as witnesses. It was perfect and intimate and everything a wedding should be. It was also strategically brilliant, though James didn't need to know that part. When we called his family with the news, the explosion was immediate and spectacular. Victoria screamed so loud I could hear her through James's phone. William threatened to cut James off completely. Caroline said I'd trapped her brother and that the marriage would never last. But here's the thing about marriage: it comes with legal rights. As James's wife, I was now entitled to half of anything he earned or acquired during our marriage. And since James held significant shares in the family business, that meant I had a stake in the Whitmore empire whether they liked it or not. I didn't waste time celebrating. While James tried to smooth things over with his family, I was busy expanding my business. I used my new connections through marriage to land bigger clients, better deals. I wasn't trading on the Whitmore name, I was careful about that, but I was definitely leveraging the access it gave me. Within 6 months, my consulting firm had grown from a one-woman operation to a team of 5. We were handling deals worth millions of dollars, and I was building a reputation as someone who could get things done. The Whitmores watched all of this with growing alarm, but there wasn't much they could do about it. That's when I made my boldest move yet. I hired a private investigator. I told myself it was just due diligence, that I needed to understand what I was dealing with. But deep down, I knew I was looking for leverage, and I found it. William Whitmore, the family patriarch who'd looked down on me like I was dirt, had been having an affair with his secretary for 3 years. Not just any affair, he'd set her up in a condo downtown, bought her a car, even paid for her daughter's private school tuition, all while preaching to me about family values and legacy. I could have destroyed him with that information. One phone call to the right gossip columnist and his marriage, his reputation, his standing in the community would have been finished. But that would have been reactive emotional. I needed to be strategic. Instead, I called a meeting. All of them: William, Victoria, Caroline, and James. I set it up at a neutral location, a conference room at a downtown hotel. I wanted them off their home turf, away from their comfort zone. "I have a proposition," I said once everyone was seated. "I want to buy into the family business. A partnership, not a hostile takeover. I'm willing to invest $10 million for a 25% stake." The silence in that room was deafening. Then William started laughing. $10 million? Keisha, do you have any idea what this company is worth? About 40 million based on your last 3 years of financial statements, I replied calmly, which, by the way, are public records since you're incorporated. Your revenue has been declining, your debt to equity ratio is concerning, and you've had to defer maintenance on several properties. You need capital injection, and I'm offering it. Victoria's face had gone white. How do you know about our financial statements? I'm a business consultant now, remember? It's my job to know these things. I opened my briefcase and pulled out a folder. I've prepared a complete analysis of your company's financial position, along with my proposal for moving forward. I slid copies across the table to each of them. You can take your time reviewing it. But I should mention that I've already secured letters of intent from 3 major tenants who want to lease space in your downtown properties. The catch is, they'll only sign if the buildings are upgraded to modern standards. That's going to cost about $8 million. James was staring at me like he'd never seen me before. Keisha, where did you get $10 million? The same place your family got their money, sweetheart. Smart investments and good timing. I turned back to his parents. I'm not here to take anything from you. I'm here to help you build something bigger, but I want a seat at the table. William was flipping through my proposal, his face growing more troubled with each page. This is actually quite comprehensive. I don't do anything halfway, I said. The question is, are you willing to accept me as a partner, or would you prefer to continue struggling with your cash flow problems? That's when I played my final card. Of course, there is one other option. I could simply wait for James to inherit his shares and then exercise my rights as his wife, but that seems unnecessarily adversarial, don't you think? Victoria's cup rattled against her saucer as she set it down. Are you threatening us? I'm offering you a choice, I said. Work with me or work around me, but either way, I'm not going anywhere. The negotiations took 2 weeks. William tried to lowball me with a 15% stake. I countered with 30% and reminded him about the tenant letters. Victoria attempted to add clauses that would force me out if James and I ever divorced. I had my lawyer add language protecting my investment regardless of my marital status. In the end, we settled on 25% ownership, with me taking on the role of chief operations officer. I would oversee the property management and development divisions, while the family retained control of the financial and legal aspects. It wasn't everything I wanted, but it was a hell of a lot more than they'd wanted to give me. The day I signed those papers, I felt something I'd never experienced before: true power. Not the power that comes from money or connections, but the power that comes from earning your place at the table through intelligence, strategy, and sheer force of will. My first act as COO was to hire a diverse team of property managers and developers. My second was to implement a comprehensive renovation program for all our properties. My third was to negotiate those tenant agreements I'd mentioned, plus 2 more I'd been working on quietly. Within a year, the company's revenue had increased by 40%. Our properties were fully leased for the first time in decades. We'd expanded into 2 new markets and acquired 3 additional buildings. The local business journal named me one of their 40 under 40 rising stars. Victoria still barely spoke to me at family dinners, but she couldn't argue with the results. Caroline had grudgingly admitted that maybe I wasn't completely useless in business. William had started asking for my opinion on major decisions, though he still grumbled about it. James was the proudest of all. I knew you were special from the moment I met you, he said one evening as we reviewed the quarterly reports, but I had no idea you were this brilliant. Your family thought they were getting a gold digger, I replied, curling up next to him on the couch. Instead, they got a gold miner. But the real victory came 2 years later when we celebrated the company's best financial year in its history. The celebration was held at the country club where I'd once been made to feel like an outsider. Now I was the guest of honor, the person everyone wanted to talk to, the one who transformed a struggling family business into a thriving enterprise. Victoria found me on the terrace, looking out over the city where so many of our properties now stood tall and profitable. Keisha, she said, her voice softer than I'd ever heard it, I owe you an apology. I turned to face her, waiting. I was wrong about you, she continued. I was wrong about your intentions, your capabilities, your worthiness to be part of this family. I let my prejudices cloud my judgment, and I'm sorry. Apology accepted, I said, but I need you to understand something. I never needed your approval to be worthy. I was worthy all along. What I needed was the opportunity to prove it. She nodded, tears in her eyes. You've proven it beyond any doubt. Today, 5 years after that first disastrous dinner, I'm the co-CEO of Whitmore Properties. We've expanded into residential development, green building initiatives, and affordable housing projects. Our company isn't just more profitable, it's more ethical, more diverse, more representative of the communities we serve. James and I have built a marriage based on mutual respect and shared goals. His family has learned to see me not as an intruder, but as the person who saved their legacy and transformed it into something bigger than they ever imagined. But here's what I want you to understand. This story isn't really about revenge or proving anyone wrong. It's about refusing to accept other people's limitations on your potential. It's about turning obstacles into opportunities and using rejection as fuel for your own success. The Whitmores thought they could dismiss me because of who I was and where I came from. They saw my background as a weakness instead of recognizing it as a strength. They forgot that hunger and determination are more powerful than inherited privilege. I didn't win by tearing them down. I won by building myself up. I didn't destroy their empire, I expanded it. I didn't take their place, I created my own place and made it indispensable. So here's my advice to anyone who's ever been told they're not good enough, not smart enough, not worthy enough. Prove them wrong by proving yourself right. Don't waste energy fighting their opinions, channel that energy into exceeding their expectations. Build your own table if they won't give you a seat at theirs. Create your own opportunities if they won't open doors for you. And never, ever let anyone else define your worth. Because at the end of the day, success isn't about what they think of you. It's about what you think of yourself. And when you know your own value, when you've built something meaningful with your own hands and your own mind, nobody can take that away from you. That's how a girl from the south side of Chicago became a co-owner of a $1 billion empire. Not through luck or connections or marrying well, but through intelligence, strategy, and the absolute refusal to accept anyone else's definition of what I could achieve. They thought they were rejecting me. Instead, they were just making room for me to reject their limitations and build something better. They thought they could break me, but they just made me stronger. If this story inspired you to never give up on yourself, smash that like button and subscribe for more stories about turning adversity into triumph. Drop a comment below. What's your biggest comeback story? I read every single one.